Right now we have 55 folks joining us, and I have about 3 minutes after, so we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you everyone for joining us this evening. My name is Kelly Stoll and I am with AECOM. I'm going to be facilitating tonight's meeting, and I want to welcome you to our first Zoom meeting. And it's definitely our first, but hopefully our last, and we can do this again in person at some point soon. I'm going to get started with our presentation here. And just going to go over our agenda. We're going to have a couple of folks from the city and the university welcome you here this evening. I'm going to go over how to comment and ask some questions here tonight. We are going to have a project overview, talk about the preliminary engineering report, the coordination that has been going on for about a year, talk about the dam removal itself, the sediment management and stream restoration, and the vision for the future. With that, we have a couple of polls. Slido.com, you'll see on the right hand or the left hand side of your screen, excuse me. You can also use your camera on your cell phone and click on that QR code and type in the D864. Just want to get a sense of kind of how you classify yourself. How many people are here? I see lots of students here coming in. This will also let us know kind of what types of things you are interested in, which will get to our next poll. We have one more poll after this, and just so you know, if you're on Slido, once we move past this poll, we'll be able to, it will automatically advance for you on your phones. Coming up at the end of the presentation, we'll also have a final poll. And again, if you just leave your phone open to Slido, it will advance to that poll for you as well. So it looks like, let's see, our students are very interested in the project. Folks from the city, university, faculty and staff, residents, some folks outside of Lynchburg, and others. Well, great, we're going to move on to the next poll. Thanks for sharing. And now we'd like to know why you attended today's meeting. To learn more about the project, removing the dam. Are you interested in the bridge and road project? Do you have concerns about flooding? I know today's rain event and yesterday's rain event had everybody checking the weather outside, and then other. Those of you who are interested in the bridge and road project, just so you know, that is a separate project with the city. This is specifically about the dam removal, so you're not going to hear a whole lot about that this evening. We are on a parallel path and there has been some coordination, but anything regarding that is a different department of the city. So thank you, everybody, for answering those. All right. So how to comment tonight and get your questions answered. Tonight, we are using Zoom, which has the Q&A feature. We'd like you to use that to ask your questions. We'll, at the end of the presentation, we'll go ahead and do a Q&A. If you have a comment or any additional information you'd like to submit after tonight's meeting, go to College Lake Dam Removal at lynchburgva.gov is an email address that you can submit comments to. We also have a downloadable comment form on the website, which I will show you here in just a little bit. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Tim Mitchell, the Director of Water Resources.
All right, good evening, everyone. I'm Tim Mitchell. I'm the Director of the City of Lynchburg's Department of Water Resources, and I'd like to welcome you all to tonight's Town Hall event. We're excited to present you with an update of where we are with the College Lake Dam project removal project and the vision of where we want to be, and then we want to listen to your input and try to answer any questions that you may have. The events of the last couple of days has further emphasized the importance of this project. There's no doubt with the increased intensity and frequency of storms that we've been seeing, it's only a matter of time until the dam overtops again. We've been working hard to develop a plan that safely removes the dam, restores the lake bed, and reconnects Blackwater Creek. And I'm very grateful for the relationship and collaboration that has occurred between the University of Lynchburg and the city over the past couple of years to develop the vision and get us to this point in the project. I especially want to thank Dr. Laura Henry Stone, who's devoted countless hours on the university's behalf to the project, and Aaron Hawkins from Water Resources, who is our project manager. And you'll be hearing more from them as we go through tonight's meeting. And again, welcome everybody. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Allison Morrison-Shetler, the president of the University of Lynchburg.
Thanks so much, Tim. Good evening. I'm Allison Morrison-Shetler, president of the University of Lynchburg, and I'm so pleased to join you this evening and to partner with the city in this exciting project to remove the College Lake Dam and transform the lake bed into a wetlands ecosystem, a learning laboratory, and recreational areas. This is a really important project and has been long needed and will ensure the safety of those living downstream and also will improve water quality locally. The weather, as Tim says, we have experienced these last few days is a stark reminder of the importance of this work. It's a wonderful example of the city and the university as good neighbors and partners. And so one day soon, this will be a place where students of all ages and our friends in the community can study urban wetland ecology and enjoy time in nature. I'm very eager to learn more about the project, and I offer my thanks to Professor Laurie Henry Stone from our faculty for her leadership and expertise. I also want to thank all of those within the various city departments who are with us on the call tonight. So thank you very much for all that you're doing. Look forward to hearing more about the project. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Erin Hawkins. I'm a water quality manager with the city's Lynchburg Department of Water Resources. I'm also serving as project manager for the College Lake Dam Removal Project. I'm excited to be here tonight to be able to share with you a lot of the work that we've been doing for the past year, collecting really important data and current conditions of our study area that we'll be going through here in a few minutes. And being able to share what we've been working on and be able to share the concepts that we have come up with that we can then move forward to moving into design in the next year and then being able to follow up towards construction once the new bridge spanning over Blackwater Creek has been constructed to be able to move the traffic off of Lakeside Drive onto this new bridge. That is a really critical part of this project, is to be able to maintain traffic along this corridor. As we know, it's a high traffic area. More than 17,000 vehicles travel this corridor every day, and that number is only projected to rise. So it is really important that as we work very closely with our public work partners as they build the new bridge, that we transition these projects to be able to minimally impact any traffic along this corridor. And with that, before we really dive into tonight's presentation, I'd like to give a word of thanks to some of the various city departments and some of our other partners that we've been working with while we have been developing the concepts. I want to give a shout out to our community development and public works departments. The public works department are the ones that are leading the charge for the new Lakeside Bridge development, which is under construction as we see going on today. Our community development staff have been very helpful in giving some insight into some of the long-term visioning that we're excited to share with you tonight. And also our public works, our Parks and Recreation Department, who we have worked very closely with to envision what some of the recreational or future recreational opportunities could be in this area. This is really important for us to at least envision at this point as we are going through permitting with our regulatory agencies and looking at the long-term strategies for property maintenance within the project area. We want to make sure that we can account for and include what we can in these early stages so that we can move forward with those projects in the future in working with the regulatory agencies involved. Also working alongside the university and with other some of our other local colleges, Randolph College included, working on research opportunities and learning opportunities for our community. Between both the University of Lynchburg and Randolph College, I know they have ongoing research opportunities that their students are pursuing within the project area and even downstream. So we're excited to be able to share this project with them and also learn from them as we go along, as they gather data with this project. We have also reached out and have been talking with the Lynchburg City Schools, particularly some of the administrators and the science teachers, to understand how we could offer this up as a resource to our local community and our students, being able to have meaningful watershed experiences, being able to learn more on a hands-on experience, learning our SOLs, and really being able to understand what their needs would be very early on. And you'll see some of the outcome of this work later on as we present to you some of those visions. So I do want to give a big thank you to our partners as we've been moving forward with this, and we'll be continuing to work with them as we move forward on the College Lake Dam removal project. One of the other resources that we have developed is a dedicated web page for the project, collegelakedamremoval.org. This page will be a landing spot for all things associated with this project. We have some really great information on here to really allow you to explore the watershed, to understand the project area, the history of College Lake. It's been within our community for many years. Many people have very cherished memories with College Lake. So we do want to acknowledge the past as we move forward into the future. And one of the really important aspects of this is the public safety. One of the pages in here is your safety. This is really important for the folks that live in flood-prone areas to understand if they live in either an inundation zone or a 100-year flood zone, so that you can be better prepared for when we have events like we've been having the past couple of days. We've seen significant flooding in our community and surrounding areas. So we want to make sure that our residents are knowledgeable on where they are and have some of the resources available and information available to make the choices during these types of rain events. So your safety tab will give you the opportunity to insert your address. It's something that our wonderful GIS folks in the city have developed. And then we also have links to other city pages that have more flood awareness and preparedness information for the folks that have questions. And so you can kind of explore this portion of the webpage to be able to learn more information. Also under news, as we move forward, we'll be sharing information such as we are videoing this meeting tonight, and we'll be able to share this information and use this as a platform as we move forward to provide updates as we move forward even into construction and in the years to come after we're done with the removal work itself, as we begin to monitor the restoration of the area. So this is going to be the landing spot for the project. And so I would encourage you to check it out. We're really proud of it. And we've really been able to integrate our geographic information system or our mapping into it so that people can really get into it and look at the watershed and move around the map to see where they live in relation to whether it's the College Lake Dam or any of the other water features that are in the city as well. So I'd encourage you to check it out, and just wanted to give you a quick overview of the city's webpage as we move forward in tonight's meeting. So jumping into the project overview, removing College Lake Dam was really not a easy decision to make, nor was one that was made very lightly. College Lake Dam has been considered a high hazard dam for more than 20 years. And even though the regulations have changed as of 2008, the regulations changed that sunset or ended certain grandfathering provisions for our dam particularly. This applied to many other dams across the United States. So what those change in regulations in 2008 required us to do is evaluate how do we bring the dam up to standard. And what that would have meant is significant improvements to the existing dam if it were to stay. That would include overtop armoring in case it were to be overtopped, and building significant walls and drainage features to be able to direct and funnel that water over to that armored spillway. That was going to be a significant undertaking, and still not addressing some of the upstream issues that College Lake was seeing at the time. As we were moving forward, we also considered removing the dam. And that would take removing the dam and also Lakeside Drive that sits on top of it, and restoring that lake area back to a riverine system. As these two options has been deliberated, since 2008, we had worked very closely with the university and having conversations back and forth on the path forward. As we were moving into the final stages of making a decision, August 2018 happened. I remember that night very, very vividly, and that's the night that we had a significant rainstorm come through our community and dump a significant amount of rain in the College Lake watershed. That's where we saw College Lake overtop and very close to failure. And if that had happened, we would be dealing with many other issues today. But that reprieve that we were given to be able to move forward with a planned removal of the dam and develop an ecological restoration of that lakebed area will allow us to build a more sustainable system through this area to carry the drainage area that actually comes down to College Lake. It carries about 22 square miles of the city down to this point. So it is a very significant drainage area that comes to College Lake Dam at this part. One of the other considerations that we will have to look at is managing the accumulated sediment. As we know, College Lake has been shrinking in size really since it was created. We started seeing the shrinking of it as early as the 1940s, not nearly hardly about a decade after it was first constructed. And over the years, we have seen a steady decline in the capacity of the lake. So knowing that there's a significant amount of sediment that would need to be managed, and that is a significant part of what this project will be managing. Along with that, we wanted to make sure we had a stable and sustainable system moving through here. So ecological restoration is not just removing a dam and letting it go. Ecological restoration will be establishing a new stream channel connecting Blackwater Creek from upstream to downstream of where the new bridge would be, so that we have a system that will carry the flow of water through there. Blackwater Creek is a significant tributary within the city of Lynchburg, and it needs to be able to carry the flood flows that come through there during these high events. Removing College Lake Dam will remove the inundation mapping, which is the threat of flood if the dam were to breach or to break. And that inundation is a significant public safety issue from not just in the immediate vicinity of the dam, but going all the way down to the James River. So this is a significant public safety improvement by removing this inundation area. And so with that, we will be working very closely with FEMA to get our mapping updates so that we have a clean map once FEMA publishes their new maps that will include the removal of College Lake as part of the newly published 100-year floodplain maps. And all of this is to say, these are the goals that we have and we have established in working with the university. And what we're going to go over now are some of the early findings in the preliminary engineering report. We'll go over some of the concept designs that we have come up with and that we will be moving forward into design later in the next year. So before we get into that, I wanted to give you kind of a bit of a tour of our study area. This area includes the College Lake area as we see it today, so that open water body that you see as you drive over Lakeside Drive, and including upstream a good portion of of Blackwater Creek itself. So the study area itself is about 113 acres that it encompasses, and it does encompass the historic extent of the lake. Currently, the lake is about 14.5 acres in size, where originally it was closer to 44 acres. So it gives you an idea of how much the lake area has diminished. As part of the study area, we have delineated over 12,000 linear feet of stream. This includes Blackwater Creek within the area, all of the tributaries that drain into it, in addition to the wetland areas. So the blue that you see on the screen is the open water area and Blackwater Creek moving upstream to the left of your screen. And then the kind of neonish green area, those are some of the existing wetlands that have been identified within our project area. We wanted to know what the full extent of the stream, the hydrology, and the wetland systems were in this area before we could really get into design. And so this image just gives you a little bit of a historical extent of the lake. And then Kelly, if you don't mind moving your cursor over that kind of upper end of the lake on the lower left-hand side of the screen, that kind of gives you the area, right in there. So that's kind of the upper area of the lake as it was back in 1941. So just to kind of give you a little bit of perspective on the study area and why the study area goes as far upstream as it does. And so now I think what we'll do is turn it over to Brandon, who will be able to give us a little bit more insight in the preliminary engineering report findings.
Thank you, Erin. Good evening, everyone. My name is Brandon Alterman. I am the technical project lead and lead stream restoration designer for the AECOM team during the College Lake Dam removal project. So over the last year, AECOM has been working very closely with the city and the university to prepare a preliminary engineering report. And that report documents the investigations that have been ongoing. For those of us that do not know what a preliminary engineering report is, or sometimes it may be abbreviated as a PER, it will review past existing collected data available, present new data collected on site. It'll document concept design options and considerations. It reviews the constructability of those designs. And finally, it presents initial cost estimates. Not only will this PER provide information on the dam removal, but it also documents potential vision and amenity upgrades that could be available at a later time for any interested parties to pursue. So all of this has been accomplished with the frequent and continuous coordination with the city's Lakeside Drive Bridge team as well. So talking a little bit about the work completed, we've spent thousands of hours in the last year performing work that could provide critical insight into developing a concept design that meets the city and university's goals for the dam removal project. That work includes a number of different survey methods, including topographic, geotechnical, bathymetric, and geomorphic surveys. We've conducted sediment characterization analysis, including quality and quantity of the sediment that's accumulated within the lake. And we've documented the rates at which that sediment is being delivered to the College Lake on an annual basis. We've had contact with, go back one, Kelly. We've had contact with the state and federal regulatory agencies to get early feedback and discuss expected regulatory requirements. And we've developed a concept design that includes items such as a controlled phase dewatering plan, sediment management plan, a dam breach concept plan, and stream and wetland restoration plan. Lastly, the project team has had early coordination with FEMA, as they are currently in the process of updating mapping in the Blackwater Creek watershed. And this will allow for the mapping updates associated with the dam removal to follow closely with the FEMA standard process and their update timing. Next slide. Yep, there we go. So what you can see here, this is an initial concept layout. In total, we've planned over 10,000 linear feet of stream restoration and almost 40 acres of wetland restoration activities within the study area. The blue cyan color you're seeing is a meandering natural channel. And this is the concept of what the restored Blackwater Creek will take through the historic lake bed and the current lake bed. The green areas you see are opportunities where we're going to pursue wetland creation. And then lastly, the pink areas that you're seeing are existing wetlands present in the study area that can be used for wetland restoration and enhancement to provide a more diverse habitat on site. So as mentioned in the work completed, we've had a number of pre-application meetings with state and federal agencies regarding the project. This allows us to plan early for the regulatory permit requirements in our design and post-restoration efforts. Agencies we have coordinated with include the United States Army Corps of Engineers, the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality, FEMA, and the Virginia Department of Conservation and Recreation. We plan to continue to have conversations and to continue to involve the regulators often during the design phase of the project as we move forward. And with that, I'd like to introduce Bill Weibrecht to discuss dam removal. Bill is a valuable member of the AECOM team and has been involved in dam removals for over 20 years.
Computer's a little slow to react. Thanks, Brandon. The first slide here is some photographs before and after of a dam removal project that was in the village of Dexter, Michigan. This project had some similarities with the College Lake project in that it was a bridge replacement project, but there was a dam attached to the bridge. So the overall project involved the removal of this dam, which was over 150 years old, and it was completely full of sediment. So the picture on the left was as the old bridge was being demolished. Picture on the right is with the new bridge and stream restoration, which included a lifting of the channel similar to what's being proposed for the College Lake project. And this was done using different types of rock structures and engineered riffles. And it involved raising the channel 5 feet over 300 feet. So the next image is a Google Earth view before and after. The photo on the left was in 2006. And you can see how it's just completely full of sediment. There's an island immediately upstream of where the bridge is. And on the photo on the right was in 2011. Post removal, you can see, it's kind of hard to see, but downstream of the new bridge there, you can see some of the whiter colored water. That's where these rock structures were put in to lift the channel bed and up underneath the bridge and even upstream of the bridge. And the purpose of that was to keep a lot of this sediment in place. So the white areas that are shown on the photo on the right are trail systems and different recreational amenities that were put in place by the village. They pursued some recreational grant funding, and it included an amphitheater, some stormwater best management practices with signage, a canoe launch area, boardwalks, bird viewing areas. And it was a part of, in Michigan, they have a metro trail system. So this was a major connection between different metro trails in this region. Let's go to the next slide. So with sediment management, as Brandon and Aaron both mentioned, that it's an important component of the project, and it's an important component of all dam removal projects. So once we start the slow, controlled phase dewatering of the impoundment, the sediment upstream begins to move. It's a very slow process, but it does begin to move downstream. So as part of the design, we will have measures in place to trap the sediment where it's easy to get to it with equipment. And there's different types of specialized machinery and practices that are utilized to do that. We can work from temporary timber mat roads that the equipment can sit on. We have specialized equipment that can get to the sediment to remove it. And then let's go to the next picture. I had some examples of that equipment. So the upper picture, this was a project in Traverse City, Michigan. This was the Sabin Dam removal on the Boardman River. That piece of equipment has very wide tracks with fins on it and it's mounted on pontoons. So this machine is hard to get stuck. This thing is highly buoyant. It can get into the riverbed to get to where the sediment needs to be removed. And it has a very long boom on the end of it with a bucket. So where this machine is being used, it can grab the sediment, spin around 180 degrees and cast that sediment up on the upland areas at least 150 feet away. So it's very useful in these types of projects. The lower picture is an example of a sediment trap as the water slowly being lowered through a controlled dewatering process. This was on the Boardman Dam removal, again on the Boardman River. This is located upstream from the project shown on the upper photo. So as the water started to lower, there were areas that became more accessible to get to the river and if with equipment to get to locations where the sediment had to be removed. So this sediment trap here was actually added to the project as conditions became favorable to get to it. So you can't see the whole machine there, but you can see the boom in the bucket there on the right side of the photo. We used super sacks. They're just gigantic sandbags that were put in the channel. And this machine came in and was able to dig the sediment again as it's mobilizing downstream during the dewatering. These areas, once you start to remove it, become really good areas to trap and remove the sediment. Just get it out of the system. And again, they can cast it to the side where conditions are favorable for more traditional type equipment to get to it, pick it up, and put it to where its final disposition is. And I think after that, I'm going to turn it back to Brandon to talk a little bit about the natural channel design.
All right, thank you, Bill. So the method of restoration that we're going to take on Blackwater Creek in the concept design includes an active restoration approach because we want to control that sediment. We use natural channel design techniques in order to achieve this. And that approach relies on site-specific collected data that we've been able to collect and provide guidance in identifying the stable channel dimensions and floodplain connectivity. So in a natural channel design project, there's a very close relationship between the stream and its floodplain as it's returned to a condition that maximizes stream function. So as you can see in this example here, this is a project that utilized natural channel design in an area that is characterized by a high amount of sediment accumulation and channel cutting due to the presence of a dam that was removed downstream without addressing the channel itself. So shortly after the dam removal, the stream was left to find its own path through the accumulated sediment. And the upper right photo is the result of the braided system that had kind of taken place through the area. Our team used an active restoration approach to manipulate the channel using natural channel design to promote channel stability and stop that sediment from continuing to degrade the water quality and affect the fish populations downstream. We used on-site native materials such as trees that were harvested nearby and boulders present on site to keep construction costs low. And we used native plantings of sedges, rushes, and willows to provide a long-term stable solution along these stream banks. And as you can see, just 11 months post-restoration, there's a stable channel with varying riffle and pool habitat for fish species, and that'll allow the wildlife to recover and promote a healthier water quality. So the second site I want to just talk about is another restoration project that is of similar size to Blackwater Creek, and it's experiencing the same or similar impairments typical upstream of the lake as you walk the upstream portions of Blackwater Creek. So the channel was degraded, it had lost connection to its floodplain and was lacking native vegetation on the banks to provide stability. So those banks were sloughing off in great amounts. And so as a result, the macroinvertebrate life suffered, and with that, a decline in fish populations was observed. So a similar meandering channel in a broad valley was taken to restore the stream and reconnect the floodplain. And in just 4 years later, the site remained stable with woody vegetation that was once, barely 12 inches when we planted it, now exceeds over 12 feet in height and lines the stream banks. And we're seeing a very high increase in macroinvertebrate and fish populations, as well as an increase in pollution-sensitive species presence. So just to recap a bit, natural channel design, which is the approach that was taken in this concept design, is a method of restoration that considers site-specific collected data. And that helps determine the proper channel size. It ensures that the channel that we construct is going to access the floodplain on a frequent basis to promote wetland creation. And it's also going to help us with an alignment that is going to produce a slope that's conducive for proper sediment transport, so we don't get a significant amount of sediment moving through the system that causes stream incision, or we don't move enough sediment that causes stream aggregation. So it's not a method or a goal of stream restoration to harden the stream in place, but to let the natural tendencies of rivers to provide that long-term stability. And we want to reestablish that proper sediment transport that was once there prior to the lake being in place, and prevent that further channel incision and degradation. We want to provide that floodplain connectivity that's going to promote those adjacent floodplain wetlands. And then the result ends up being a project that's both cost effective, it's low maintenance, and it's environmentally friendly. So next slide, please. And just as we mentioned, we're targeting a significant amount of wetland restoration to provide additional ecosystem restoration value. These wetlands, which will be floodplain pocket wetlands for a good description of them, these will be areas that are graded so that when the storms do access the floodplain, that it'll be able to fill various areas of these wetlands, provide proper hydrology and groundwater recharge. And these wetlands will provide some replacement habitat to maybe some of the species existing in the lake that prefer stagnant or ponded water. And that may just relocate to a different area during the removal as it's converted from an open water to more of a riverine system. And these wetlands will also increase the flood storage and attenuation that will reduce the severity of the flood potential to downstream areas during College Lake Dam's removal. And with that, I'd like to turn it back over to Erin Hawkins, the city's water quality manager, as she discusses a little bit more of the preliminary concept.
Thank you, Brandon and Bill. I really appreciate that. So looking at the plan view here, looking at kind of the top right of your screen is where to orient you is the College Lake Dam, and then moving further up the current lake area into that upstream area. This is the concept that has been looked at for not only providing the removal of the dam itself, but then being able to carry this stream channel through the lake area. It's really important for this channel to be able to carry the floodwaters that will come through here. Removing the dam, as I mentioned earlier, will have an improvement on the downstream area during larger storm events. But Blackwater Creek is a major tributary of the city. To this point, it's 22 square miles, and by the time it gets down to its confluence with the James, it's draining a good portion. I don't have the number off the top of my head, pardon me, but it is draining a significant portion of the city down to that area, because at that point it's bringing in Ivy Creek and some of our other major tributaries, which all of them have their headwaters originating in the surrounding counties of both Campbell County and Bedford County. So this isn't a small stream system that is going to lend itself to grading or to really being able to spread itself out. We are really looking at having to have a stable, sustainable channel to be able to carry these waters. But through the natural stream process, as Brandon explained, it will give that natural flexibility for that channel to establish itself through the area. What this graphic also will begin to show is sediment management areas. And when I was looking at it earlier, the brown seemed a little bit darker than what it's showing up on the screen. So Kelly, if you don't mind highlighting those areas, that area there, and then to the west, if you don't mind. These are two areas that we have been we have identified as stream sediment management areas that we will be able to, as we are pulling back the sediment from the lake area, to be able to manage it on site to a significant extent. As we went through the earlier studies, as we were, trying to decide, do you armor the lake or do you remove it? We had to look at a concept of, how much sediment that we're dealing with. So we're looking at having to manage about 150,000 cubic yards of sediment. Brandon, correct me if I'm off on that number. But we're looking at having to manage a fairly significant amount of sediment on site. And the reason why we're focusing that on site in these areas is sediment transport is extremely expensive for this project. It cost savings of it at minimal $8 million just being able to keep the sediment on site. By being able to reduce the amount of money from having just to transport that, whether it's finding an off-site location, tipping fees if that were to be taken to as a landfill cover, to cap a landfill, or other beneficial reuses, there are limitations to that, and primarily that it is the cost of transport of that. So identifying these areas was important to try to minimize cost so that more of that effort could be put into the restoration of this upland area from the dam. And with that, we have looked at it very consciously with the future kind of recreation concept that we'll look at here shortly, but integrating this into the landscape. This is not going to be a mere sediment pile that is going to be left to dry out, but this would be managed to a way that it will be integrated into the landscape so that it becomes part of the immediate surrounding area, and even looking at integrating proposed or future trail systems through that to use that area. So it has been looked at very deliberately and very consciously on where we're trying to locate these areas. And so with that, the green areas on the preliminary concept, again, are those wetlands areas that we have talked about either creating as we go through or enhancing as we go through the restoration efforts. And we will be looking at the phasing opportunities that we have for implementing these wetland restorations as we have the funding available to do all of it. So that is something that through this early stage of preliminary design, we are looking at what that phasing and what those needs are for the long term. We can move on to the next slide. And so what we want to be able to share with you, this is Shannon, who is on the call with us with AECOM, has been really a mastermind behind being able to help us envision what this will look like. So imagine if you were coming down Lakeside Drive, coming over the new bridge, looking upstream, this would be as a concept view of what that stream channel would be coming down to where present day, if you were kind of in the foreground of your picture, would be where the bridge would be. And then moving further upstream as you go to the top right of the screen. And as you can see, there's actually kind of, yep, thank you, Kelly, kind of where that sediment area is right in that area. That's a concept rendering of how we begin to integrate that into the landscape. So that it is kind of part of that ecosystem. And what we will do is all of that will be accounted for in the HECRAS modeling that will be done so that as we are establishing what the floodplain will be with FEMA and through this new corridor, we'll be able to minimize any impacts or any erosion, and we will be deploying sediment stabilization methods to be able to keep that sediment in place. Because that is something that is really important if we're going to be able to keep it on site and be able to keep it in place. So all of that can be monitored. And part of that is, this is not a simple construction project where you go out and you do a construction project or deconstruction project as demolishing the dam, and then you walk away from it. This would be something that would be monitored for a long period of time. There's a minimum of 5-year compliance monitoring that we will be working with our regulatory agencies, both DEQ and the Army Corps of Engineers, to be able to monitor the stability of this area, and we'll work very closely with AECOM so that we can know, minor adjustments or major adjustments that we're seeing that we can go in and have those addressed. So this is something that that we're looking at for really the long-term sustainability and making sure that this is done right the first time, and really not have to come back in and have any major issues. That is not something that we want to have as part of this project. So looking at the stability of the channel, looking at how it carries through this lake bed area has been a significant part and questioned all the way through the process of how we can make sure we have a stable system to transition Blackwater Creek back into. And with this, there's a whole lot of research opportunities and education opportunities. So I'm going to turn it over to Laura, to Henry Stone with the university to talk about what some of the research opportunities are that they're working on, and to talking about taking it a step further with amenities and trails.
Thank you, Erin, and good evening, everybody. I have the privilege of sharing a little bit of this exciting vision with you all. This vision really portrays, our 2 years of work since August of 2018 to imagine what the future of this ecosystem will look like. And of course, the College Lake has been an important part of our community, the university community, for a long time, and we imagine being stewards of this ecosystem, into the future. And so this gives us an opportunity to learn collectively with each other, with our students, with the wider community about how to be good ecological stewards of this environment. In fact, how to restore some of this rather damaged ecosystem. And I want to quote very quickly somebody who is sort of a hero of mine, Aldo Leopold, who created the land ethic, right? And said that a thing is right when it tends to preserve the stability, beauty, and integrity of the land, and it is wrong when it tends otherwise. And so I share that with you because I think that what we've designed here is in line with Leopold's land ethic to tend to preserve and restore really this environment. So what you see here in the amenities and trails, again, Shannon deserves a lot of credit for putting this together, and I get to present it to you. But this image really portrays the collaborative effort that's gone into imagining the future for this ecosystem. And so a lot of these amenities and trails that you see here are not part of the initial concept design and the preliminary engineering report. These are future add-ons that we're envisioning as potential for this project into the future. So what that means for us as an institution and for our peer institutions in the area and for K-12 educators in the area is that we can gather data and learn from this project about how to do this kind of dam removal and ecological uplift project in an urban watershed like ours, and share that with the wider world. Because of course, dam removals are becoming more and more common, and we have this opportunity to learn from it and share. So what you'll see here is, in addition to the stream channel that Brandon has already talked about, you see some dotted paths that could be both the existing trails as well as trails that we might add and boardwalks that we might add to provide access for things like wildlife viewing, bird viewing, wetland research opportunities, environmental education opportunities for local students and K-12 folks. And again, Kelly's also identifying that same area where there'll be some terraforming from the sediment that will be deposited from the lake bed into that hillside, and you can see a switchback trail if you look really closely on top of that hillside. So I think that's everything from me, and we're getting close to being able to hear from you all, and I'll turn it back over to Erin. Thanks.
Thank you, Laura, for that. So project timeline moving forward, as we know currently, the road is currently under construction for the new Lakeside Bridge connecting up to the lighted intersection of College Drive. And so getting that project underway this past year, that is expected to go until late 22 and into early 2023. So it is an approximate 2-year project to get everything done. Along with that, or concurrently with that, I should say, is that we've been doing our preliminary engineering report, and we'll be moving into the design phase moving forward. What we anticipate is to about early to mid 2022, moving into a bidding phase where we would go into construction possibly towards the end of 2022 or early 2023. This would be done so that the majority work for the Lakeside Bridge Road project would be complete. Traffic would then be moved off of the current alignment of Lakeside Drive over the dam so that there's no interruption to, or very minimal interruption, except for that transition to the new road for traffic on Lakeside Drive. And then we will be moving forward for construction, looking to potentially complete that if timeline keeps on its current path in early 2024. From that, we'll move into the post-construction monitoring phase of the project, and we'll monitor it not just for the 5 years after, but working with the university. I'm sure that monitoring work is going to continue for many, many years, if not decades to come for this area through research opportunities and otherwise. One of the other items that's really important for me to talk about as part of this project is the mapping for the FEMA updates. What we're doing right now, FEMA has instituted an initiative to update the 100-year floodplain maps, or as they're being referred to now, the 1% chance floodplain maps for the region. And this is something that they're really doing statewide, and the maps that we have are approximately 40 years old. So FEMA has undertaken the effort to completely reevaluate the FEMA floodplain maps. And as part of that, our timelines for these two projects, for the FEMA mapping update and the College Lake Dam removal project, were not in alignment with one another. So what was forecast is that FEMA would be publishing their maps before the project was complete. What we have done, and we acknowledge FEMA as another partner in this project, is have aligned those two projects so that the final publishing of the FEMA floodplain maps will be able to take into account the changes with removing College Lake Dam. So once they are published, they'll be, as I like to refer to them, clean maps without a massive amendment right there in the middle, so that we know clearly what the new water surface elevations will be for Blackwater Creek in this area. So that process is going on concurrently. AECOM is working very closely with FEMA Region 3 to have this work done. And once all is said and done, we'll have updated maps probably in early 2024, once we're able to kind of align that with the College Lake Dam removal project. What we'll also be able to do is study the changes between the current mapping, again, noting that it's 40 years old, but we'll be able to note the changes between the water surface elevations between what they currently are today with dam and then without dam. And then we'll be able to also overlay that with the FEMA modeling. So we'll be able to see, if FEMA weren't even coming through and updating their mapping, we'd be able to see what those changes would be. But then ultimately, the FEMA maps will supersede the current 1978 maps that we have. We have a small portion, but not the entire city as a whole. So this FEMA mapping project will actually benefit the entire city, all of the floodplains within our community, including taking into account the change in condition on Blackwater Creek. So I wanted to give you an update on that timeline. Moving forward, one of the really important things with this project and working with the university is identifying, how much of these identified goals are we able to do? The study area as a whole is a significant undertaking to take on. The city has dedicated $17.5 million to be able to put towards the dam decommissioning and the restoration efforts. And then working very closely with the university, we're going to develop a phased approach of being able to ultimately, what is our ultimate goal of being able to do all of the identified restoration that we have covered with you tonight. Even if that doesn't come to fruition, what we will be able to do is have a plan for phasing that in so that as more funding becomes available, we might be able to do that. So right now, the hardline budget is $17.5 million that the city has dedicated towards this. But again, working very closely with the university, we'll be looking for other avenues of funding to be able to see the full study area be implemented with this. So I think we'll move on to the next slide, please. And I'll turn this back over to Kelly.
Hi, everybody. Sorry about that. We just wanted you to, since this is our first virtual meeting, give us some feedback on how you think we did. We are always looking and learning to improve. So we want to hear from you, and we appreciate that feedback. And we thank you for the scores. We're going to move into some Q&A right now. We have been getting your questions in the Q&A section. Some have been answered by some of the folks here with us, my colleagues at AECOM. But we're going to start off with some of the questions that we've been receiving for the team here. And I'm going to first cover, again, how to ask a question. Use that Q&A icon there and type your question here in the Q&A box. I don't believe I've seen a whole lot of folks who have called in. If I'm going to check our attendees, but Zoom does allow for folks to call in, and we want to give those folks an opportunity to ask any questions that they may have. So if they do have some comments, they can submit those before, but while getting their questions answered. So first off, I am going to ask a question here about, I think Aaron covered it. The project is expected to be completed, and what exactly is the cost to the city currently, Aaron? Aaron, come back.
Sorry, and I was speaking to you with my microphone on mute and no camera. I apologize. So I'm sorry, can you please repeat the question?
Absolutely. The project is, the question was, what is the expected date of completion of the project and the projected cost to the city?
Absolutely. Going back to the project timeline slide, we are anticipating about a 2-year window for the road and bridge project to be complete, and then post that it'll be another 2 years. So we're looking at probably a approximately 2024 timeline, so another 4 years for both the bridge and then the dam removal and restoration efforts to go on. As I mentioned, the city has contributed $17.5 million for the project, and we are currently working with the university to identify funding resources that we could contribute in addition to that for the project.
We have a question about the plans for removal of debris, tires, garbage, logs, etc., in the wetlands after high water events or flooding. Has that been...
That will be something that we will work with the university on to develop a post-construction kind of management plan for the area. It is quite unfortunate that throughout our city, we see a significant amount of trash and debris come down our stream channels. It really comes back to each of us individually to be responsible for our trash from ourselves personally, our properties, and transport of it. And it's really disheartening when we see the amount of the amount of trash that does come down our community. And it will be one of those items that will just have to be addressed moving on. What we could look at is volunteer opportunities, student service hours, or some other means of contributing volunteer hours towards addressing stream cleanup events, like the city does sponsor that. every year, trying to promote stream cleanup. So that could be something that the city could work collaboratively with the university to create opportunities to do those cleanups.
We have a question about the 100-year flood map, and I think you mentioned it briefly, that it is being drawn without the dam in place. So as you mentioned, we're going to get the clean maps.
Right. The final FEMA floodplain maps will take into account the College Lake Dam removal. And so that will be reflected in there. And we will see a significant, at least in the immediate vicinity of the dam, of an elevation change there and lowering the FEMA floodplain map. And so we'll actually see a decrease in elevations upstream of College Lake. And as we develop those maps, we will be doing a separate public education and outreach program associated with the adoption of those maps, so that every property owner that touches the floodplain, whether it's currently or proposed, if there's any change to it, every property owner in the city will be notified of those pending changes and have the opportunity to review that information through the FEMA mapping update process. So that will be a separate process that will be done, but every property owner will be notified of those changes.
We have some folks asking about the taxpayers here in the city paying for the project versus the college. Can you kind of address, or I'm sorry, the university, can you address kind of the path forward there?
I will do my best. As mentioned, this is very much a partnership between the city and the university. In this particular instance, it's unique in that the city is the owner and the operator of the dam itself. Through the course of the decades after the dam was built, when that area, the city was annexed into, or from the county annexed into the city, it then became a responsibility of the city because as a municipality, we're the ones responsible for our road systems. And since Lakeside Drive sits on top of the dam, it became our responsibility. But in the sense of the shared partnership is that the lake area is actually owned by the university, and they own a significant portion of the land upstream of the present day open water area of the lake. And so that's why we're working closely with them to identify the additional funding so that we could restore the full historic extent of the lake area as part of this project, and where we'll be able to bridge over those costs of being able to. Our primary focus in moving forward is dam removal and stabilizing the stream channel through that, through the former lake bed, reconnecting Blackwater Creek upstream to downstream. And then again, continuing on the conversations with the university on any other future funding contributions to the project.
There's some concern that by taking the dam out, that will actually cause more flooding. Can you speak to that?
The removal of the dam is not necessarily going to create more flooding. Blackwater Creek is, as I mentioned before, it's a significant tributary. It's one of the main stem tributaries that runs through this portion of the city. So it has a very large drainage area, 22 square miles of drainage area. It goes all the way out to parts of Timberlake Road out at Greenview Drive, well into the county, in areas as far out as Waterlick Road, all the way to 221, coming back around the city, and including a portion of the Liberty University and part of Candler's Mountain drainage coming down through that area of the city. So it's a very large drainage area that comes down through here. So when we're looking at it, we're having to take into account that this is a significant water body, and it is going to be prone to flooding with or without the dam there. So we're not going to see the flood potential is not going to be removed from Blackwater Creek, because we see that both upstream, well upstream, and even downstream of this system. But having this impounding area removed it will eliminate some of that inundation flooding threat that could come through here. And some of the backwater conditions. So as the water flows into College Lake, it creates a backwater condition and actually kind of ponds that water up. And rather than just ponding it up, it will allow that flood flow to come down through that area. So it will actually, in some areas, improve the flooding potential. And I know there has been some specific comments that were made regarding other drainage concerns, not necessarily right at College Lake Dam, but in the immediate upstream and downstream vicinity. And if we have your information, I'll be happy to speak with you offline on those of your concerns to see whether it is something that's directly affected by this project or it is something that would need to be addressed separately if it can be addressed.
Has there been any testing on the sediment itself?
Recently, there has not been. Back when in 2018, there was sampling that was done both just before, during, and after the College Lake was drained. This was after the flood event when we needed to drain the lake down to do a full assessment and for as directed by the Department of Conservation and Recreation. So it was something that was monitored at that time, and it was done for, if I remember correctly, approximately at least 6 months after the lake was refilled. We continued to perform a very wide array of testing that included nutrients, included sediments, including bacteria, and included a litany of things that if there are other specific questions, I'd be happy to talk with you offline about them specifically.
Some folks are concerned about the ecosystem once the dam is removed and some work starts to begin to reestablish the channel. Brandon, can you talk about your experience and what you've seen in other projects?
Yeah, so this isn't a type of project where you just rip the dam out all in one piece or anything like that. This is going to be a very controlled process, a very, very slow dewatering. What was previously drained in a matter of hours or days is now going to take months to drain the lake. So we're going to give plenty of time for any species in the area that may not be favorable within that riverine system, time to relocate, and time to adjust. The fish will slowly go down to the portion of the stream that is flowing. I think that a lot of times what we're doing is converting this habitat to something that it's currently not. So, I would be lying if I didn't say that there are some species present that aren't going to like a stream system more than they like the current lake bed. But the overall increase in water quality associated with doing this work and solving a lot of the sedimentation issues that are occurring within here is going to actually provide a net benefit to other species, both downstream, upstream, and currently within the project area. Hopefully that helps address the question.
Safe removal of the sediment, how does that get handled, Brandon, in terms of moving it and ensuring erosion doesn't happen as things progress?
Sure. So the sediment's going to be mobilized within the lake bed area on likely timber mats or other vehicles just within the study area. There's not going to be any efforts to attempt to move sediment along existing roadways. And so as far as stabilizing the area, that's more or less once we deposit in the locations that we've designated for stockpiling, it's going to be stabilized in lifts and it's going to blend directly within the natural hillside. So once it's vegetated, once that vegetation matures, the trees are growing on it, honestly, you would never even know it existed. that was once what was the sediment within, the lake.
Can you talk about why we've chosen or looking at a single channel versus perhaps multi-channel design?
Yeah, so at one point we investigated potentially doing a multi-thread channel design, seeing if the stream was favorable to spreading out onto a floodplain such as this. But as we quickly seen when the lake bed was drained the first time, this stream is very, very powerful. It moves a ton of sediment. It has a tremendous amount of base flow already. And so initially, as soon as that lake was drained, that channel cut really rapidly into a single thread system through the lake bed. And so our kind of a design approach to attempting something like that was abandoned because of the risk that, a storm event or something would come through that would destabilize that braided system, and the channel would just would choose one path and then start to cut. And it was also a cost-based kind of decision as well, because when you put the channel in a single thread, it's very easy to anticipate where erosion is going to occur, where you need additional stability, where you need grade control in order to kind of keep that channel stable. If you have multiple threads, you're spreading out your efforts in a lot of places, trying to stabilize various parts of the channel, trying to cut down, trying to avoid incision of the channel. As far as a single thread design, what we're looking at doing is providing grade control. We're going to provide that through either rock or rock and log cross veins. There's going to be a number of those. We're going to look at doing reinforced riffles or constructed riffles, which are very, very coarse riffles that'll be deeper than the downstream pools, as to make sure to stop any sort of head cutting or incision, as well as this. We've kind of dubbed it or called it the Boulder Cascade, but it's a series of grade control veins from the lake bed down to its connection of Blackwater Creek that'll make sure that there's no head cutting that starts back up through this lake bed area.
We have a question about some of the future recreation and amenities that are possible, specifically about Beaver Point. Is that something, Erin, you can address?
I can, and I may wind up deferring to Laura. I think the question is that it might become a hub again. And that is the potential opportunity that we could have. What we've conceptualized anyway is, that could be a hub for an educational center for students to come to learn. We're looking at, in talking with the Lynchburg City Schools, they're very interested in, field trips that are in their backyards, local destinations that they could take their students to have these meaningful education experiences. So it's possible, yes. It is envisioned further down the road, and it would be something that, working with the university and our Parks and Recreation folks, we would have to move that concept and that vision forward. And that would be a little bit ways down the road, but there are lots of opportunities, and that's why we wanted to look for those, now, so that we can integrate that into some of the permitting and planning efforts that we were doing now. As I've kind of mentioned, we didn't want to cut ourselves off at the knees and prevent ourselves from being able to do some of these activities because we didn't think about it now, where we wish we would have thought about it, say, if we approach this 20 years from now. So that's one of the things. One of the other comments, Kelly, if you don't mind, I'm going to go ahead. One of the things that one of the questions is talking about, if it's not going to increase flooding, how will it prevent flooding? One of the important pieces to understand about the nature of a high hazard dam and a regulated dam is the inundation mapping that has to be done and accounted for in the design of the spillway configuration for dams. So how will a dam and a water body discharge? How will that overflow in a controlled manner? And one of the things that the regulators look at is that what happens if a dam breaches? You need to have in emergency action plans and evacuation procedures for the properties that would be impacted. And typically those inundation areas are larger than the 100-year floodplain. So if we were in a flood condition, I'm not saying that this has happened, or is going to happen, but in the probability that College Lake Dam were to have burst, failed, breached, whichever term you'd like to use, during a significant rain event, whether it was 2018, whether it was this week, or whether it's some future storm event, the wave of water that would go downstream would be much higher than that 100-year floodplain. So that is what I'm refer to as reducing some of the flood potential, is removing that inundation area and the affected properties and structures that would be downstream in those areas. So I wanted to try to go ahead and address that while I was speaking. Thank you.
We did have a question about the 5-year monitoring and what sort of things will be monitored during that time, and if we had parameters laid out for that just yet.
Yes, we are looking at those parameters now, and part of this concept phase. That will be something that we will have to work with the regulators on once we start making our permit applications next year. And I'll actually defer some of this to Brandon to talk about, and if there's any more specifics to it. But what we will look at is the stream stability, looking at the channel and making sure that our structures are holding. There may be vegetation management, making sure that the vegetation that is planted, whether it's seeding shrubs or some of the seedlings or trees that are planted, making sure that we are getting good vegetation reestablished in the disturbed area. So all of that will be taken into account for in the compliance monitoring phase.
Yeah, that's right, Erin. So some of the parameters we're looking at incorporating within this are very targeted towards site stability. You know, a lot of those are woody stem counts for the natural vegetation. We're going to be looking at herbaceous cover to make sure our vegetation is growing at a very dense rate. We want to also make sure we're managing invasive species. Once we dewater this, there's going to be a significant amount of area that's going to be exposed ground. And so we want to have a handle on invasive species to make sure we give our native vegetation the best chance of reestablishing in the area, because we know that there is about a half dozen invasive species just within our area between multiflora rose bushes, there's bamboo, there's Japanese stiltgrass. There's just a variety of invasives present already that we're going to have to combat during that monitoring time. But we're going to look a lot to make sure the channel's not incising. We're going to be doing annual cross-section surveys in the same location, doing particle counts to make sure we're not aggrading or degrading the bed of the stream. And that all goes into whether the project is successful in a monitoring standpoint, and that's part of the permitting requirements we're gonna have as part of this project.
We have some questions from Slido, and I think it's great that you guys are submitting that way too. Erin, somebody would like to know if the city's willing to spend the money on the bridge, why can't we keep the lake and remove the sediment?
It's still a high hazard structure that would still have to be significantly improved if we were to keep the dam. So if we were to invest the money, it's really going to come down to dollars for my answer, but it's just the reality of it. We're coming in with a bridge. It's a significant project, $20+ million towards the new bridge alignment. If we were to come in and do dredging cost, it could range anywhere between probably $10 to $20+ million to just do dredging costs. And that's depending on how far back to what condition that you dredge it to. That's not going back to original condition. So even if you kind of find a suitable time period in between, it's still going to be a significant cost to do that. And again, just for some of the sediment that we were looking at, it was $8 million, and that's not everything that would go into actually just removing the sediment. That's not the total sediment cost savings on site, because we're still having to manage that cost. So the settlement cost itself is still greater than $8 million when we're looking at this in the scheme of this project. And then, so if you keep the bridge at 20 some plus $million, you invest somewhere between say 10 to $20 million, depending on how much dredging work that you actually wind up going. Then there's that recurring maintenance cost associated with trying to keep that open water area open from sediment as it might continue to accumulate. But we can't forget that we still have a high hazard dam that still does not meet regulations. So it would still have to be armored and it would still have to be managed. And so there would still be an emergency action plan. There would still be monitoring involved. And then there would still be the threat of overtopping that structure. The cost alone for doing that, these numbers are a little bit dated and I'm going to estimate it, but they were somewhere, I believe, in the $14 to $18 million range. So when you add that on top of, dredging cost, you wind up with a $30+ million to keep the lake and do the dredging cost. So it's a significant cost to doing that. So it's when it boiled down to making the decision from a public safety standpoint, that's why the decision was to remove the lake, to remove the dam.
We have another question about the city or the university envision a qualification process for interested contractors. I guess as we move things forward with decommissioning the dam and removing the sediment, et cetera.
That is highly likely that we will have some type of qualification process. We're not at that point yet. All of that would be put out through the city's procurement website and procurement office and would be something that we could at that time be happy to talk with contractors about that pre-qualification process. So if you're a contractor listening, please keep an eye out.
Brandon, can you talk about the difference with dewatering the dam this time compared to the 2018 event and that effect on the fish and the wildlife?
Sure. So when the dam was initially dewatered, the main reason behind that was to perform repairs on the dam. So they utilized the low-level outlet to open the valve and drain the lake. And with that, there was a release of sediment that was a part of that dewatering. This process of the dewatering plan that we're anticipating is actually built around a siphon system. And that siphon system is going to allow us to control the dewatering at a rate that's very slow. At that time, the traffic along Lakeside Drive will be relocated to the new bridge. And so these siphons will reach into the lake bed area. We're going to, we've prepared to construct a temporary dam in place of the existing one so that we can continue to drain the lake at a controlled rate using the siphons. And then we would remove that temporary dam and the dam itself when we were ready and the lake was drained down far enough. But this is a very, very slow process. Like, the lake is 13 feet deep or so right at the dam area. And we expect that to go no faster than maybe a half a foot a day. And that's if we're really pushing the siphons. And the siphons are also in place because they can be turned on in the case of a very heavy storm event to move that water past the dam area and the lake bed area on downstream in case one of those events occurs.
Can you also talk about some of the vegetation plan for planting that new vegetation in the area and what types of soil we will either bring in or treat and what kind of plants we're looking at for the plan?
Sure. So the planting mixes that we're looking at are a variety of both herbaceous planting mixes that are common within immediate stream bank areas. Usually these riparian areas are 20 to 25 feet from the stream banks. And then we also have various upland seed mixes that we're proposing, as well as a very diverse mix of woody vegetation. There's probably close to probably close to 10 different species, and we attempted to select species that were not commonly volunteered. They weren't already existing within the area because we didn't want to plant something that already exists. If you've ever walked upstream of Blackwater Creek or that area, you know it's pretty much dominated by sycamores and box elders. And we're going to look to bring in various species of oaks, sourwoods, black willows, alders, just a variety of species that just don't exist, but are very common and native to Virginia in this area of the Piedmont. And the same thing goes with the herbaceous vegetation. It's driven very, very heavily upon using deep rooting sedges and rushes, and that's what we really need to hold this sediment in place. There's not going to be any sort of topsoil or anything like that brought in at this point. You know, we believe that probably we'll do some soil testing to see if that material is good enough to plant on, and then likely what they'll do is they'll treat it with some sort of fertilizer if we need to at this time. But that's just accumulated really sediment that's a source from upstream. And we've done a number of studies upstream of the study area where we've actually walked very, very far up Blackwater Creek into where it braids into Dreaming Creek and Tomahawk. And that same type of sediment, this kind of sandy loam, exists throughout that entire watershed. And that's what we're seeing within Blackwater Creek. And so it's not like a special kind of sediment or soil type that we're attempting to plant this vegetation on.
The next question I think might be a little bit for Laura and a little bit for Aaron. It's about volunteer opportunities. This person understands that this is a professional construction project, but do you guys envision volunteer opportunities in terms of cleanup, water quality monitoring, planting, vegetation, etc.?
Erin, would you like me to jump in on that?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I can certainly talk a little bit about, especially opportunities for our students, both in terms of research opportunities. I didn't mention earlier that we already have a lot of students who are doing preliminary data collection regarding water quality, also regarding hydrology. We have some groundwater wells that a student put in for us to help supplement this project. But if you're asking about things like citizen science or stewardship opportunities, certainly there are a lot of opportunities for organizations like the Master Naturalists to be involved, including what Brandon was just touching on with sort of facilitating native species and managing invasive species. There are absolutely going to be opportunities for that once the project area is safe for accessing, you know, by volunteers and students. Safety is obviously of top concern as well. I hope that answers the question. Thank you.
Absolutely. If I could add on to that, you know, our stormwater outreach coordinator that we have, in addition to our other public relations folks, they're always looking for opportunities and grant programs to be able to implement outreach. One of the things we're looking at now is beginning at least a small scale through the 21st century programs with the city, although COVID has unfortunately put a squash on that for right now. What we're excited about is being able to move forward with some water quality monitoring that has been accounted for and approved in that grant. So we're excited about being able to look at doing some at least limited water quality monitoring right now with our outreach program, and certainly that has the opportunity to develop into further partnerships, as Laura mentioned, whether it's through the National Naturalists, other organizations such as the James River Association. They're here in our backyard and do a lot of great work in our community too. So there are plenty of opportunities there. I'd also like to take a brief minute to kind of talk about a vision for the future that I have for the city of Lynchburg. In my role as water quality manager, I've actually often referred to for drinking water quality, and then I have to refer those to our water division. But you know, in the role of a water quality manager and looking at managing our stormwater program, which is really our MS4, Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System permit that we have with the Department of Environmental Quality. One of the things that we're very keen on and very interested on is looking at things on a watershed scale, of being able to look at Dreaming Creek, Tomahawk Creek, Blackwater Creek, Ivy Creek, the creek, the major watersheds that we have in our community. And what I want to do is to be able to develop watershed plans that help address those local issues. We've all heard about the Chesapeake Bay TMDL. We kind of all understand that there's a pollution diet associated with that, and we're doing things throughout our community to help improve that situation. As we drill down further into local TMDLs, and pardon if I get a little nerdy, and I'll try not to get too nerdy as I talk about it, but as we begin to look at those local TMDLs and those local impairments, looking at things on the watershed scale will allow us to address those pollutant-specific issues, whether it's sediment, whether it's nutrients, whether it's bacteria. I know there's several questions about bacteria pollution within the comments, and rather than trying to address them individually tonight, what I would love to do is have a sidebar conversation. If you're a university student or if you're outside of that, I'd love to have a conversation with you. I'm including Laura as well, to be able to understand that, because as we move forward, the research, to understand the research that's being done, because that's important information that the city can use as we develop those plans. So this is going to take some time to do, but looking at things on the watershed scale, we can look at outreach education. We can target specific opportunities, whether it's trash education, yard education, homeowner type education, looking for retrofit opportunities throughout our watersheds where we've had many decades of development with very little to no stormwater management on those projects would be extremely beneficial for our community. That takes time, and that redevelopment as that occurs, it tends to be a lot slower than what we would normally like to see with some of the benefits that we get for some of the newer development projects that are implementing stormwater measures. So it really is, on a watershed scale, something that it's a direction that I want to move our program in, and being able to look at it on that scale. And I think all of this culminates together along with this project to begin to see everything is interconnected, upstream affects downstream, whether it's trash, whether it's sediment, whether it's pet waste as a source of bacteria, whatever that pollutant of concern is. So I just wanted to kind of contribute some insight into the direction that we want to move our program in, and being able to address these things on the local scale, and be inclusive of any of and all of the issues that we have within our watersheds.
Are almost 5 minutes over our time. There are a fair number of questions that we did not have a chance to get to, but the benefit of using Zoom is that we do have your name and contact information on all of those questions, and we can take those and follow up with you either individually or as a group. And I know Aaron and Dr. Stone, as well as others, are definitely open to having further conversations about some of these questions you might have. So, Aaron, do you have any parting words before we close it up?
Well, I'd like to say thank you. Thank you, everyone, taking the time out of your schedule. I was, really tickled that we had the turnout that we did. And I appreciate your attendance tonight. Our goal was to try to share this information. This has been, we had anticipated having this meeting much earlier in the year to get some input before we got this far into our preliminary engineering report. But I'm hoping that it worked out for the best, because I think we're really proud of where we've gotten, and we're really proud of where we're going. So we were excited to be able to share this information with you, and we will certainly be continuing to update our website. As you see on the screen before you, collegelakedamremoval.org will be the landing spot for all of our information, and keep a lookout for a lot of good stuff. We'll have this recorded video on there. We're going to try to highlight some of the research activities that the university is doing. I know Ben's project with the water monitoring wells is a really exciting one that gives really a body of knowledge to dam removal that we really don't have a whole lot of pre-construction information on the changes in the water surface elevation. And so as we implement those areas and then be able to continue that through construction and even post-construction to monitor that is really going to add to the body of knowledge for this industry as future dam removal projects are done. So we're excited about that. So as we move forward, getting designs done, we will have future public meetings to be able to share with you the information. As we get closer to time of actual construction, we will have project meetings to be able to share specific construction related information. And once a contractor's on board, we'll have meetings with them as well to do that. So hopefully the next time you see us, might be hopefully in person, but if not, we have this platform that we can use to get input, but we will bring to you kind of the final design concept of where we are moving forward. And we anticipate that probably mid to late 2021. So we look forward to bringing that information to you. So again, thank you, everybody. I really appreciate it. If there are additional questions, we will try to follow up with you on those. We'll be happy to have sit-down conversations, particularly I know there's a number of the University of Lynchburg students that have participated tonight. So we thank you for your attendance outside of your regularly scheduled school work that you do. And along with Laura, I'd be happy to sit down and speak with you about it. So, but again, thank you all and hope you all have a really great evening.
Thank you all.